Studio Part 1. The weight of the concrete. The sensory trap. The silence in the bedroom wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that only exists when two people are awake, but afraid to speak, paralyzed by the same math that never adds up. Mark stared at the ceiling. A water stain in the corner had grown over the winter, shaped like a mocking cloud. Beside him, Sarah's breathing was shallow. She was awake. She was always awake before the alarm. Then the shriek, 5:30 a.m. The radiator clanged and hissed, a metallic ghost haunting their small, damp apartment. Outside, the world was a monochromatic smear of charcoal and ash. It had been raining in this suburb for 22 days straight, a cold, relentless drizzle that turned the sidewalks into slick traps of oil and mud. Mark swung his legs out of bed. His knees popped, a reminder of 40 years spent mostly on concrete. In the kitchen, the light flickered with a dying buzz. He poured a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt beans and disappointment. The grind, the debt, was a silent roommate. It sat at the table while they ate generic cereal. It watched them through the envelopes with transparent windows piled on the counter. Red ink. Overdue. Final notice. At 7:00 a.m., the neighbors, the Millers, started their daily ritual. A door slammed. A dog barked. Then came the shouting, muffled, angry words about money or chores or nothing at all, vibrating through the thin, peeling wallpaper. Mark walked to his car, a rusted sedan that groaned under the frost. His job at the regional logistics hub was a graveyard for ambition. For 8 hours, he moved boxes. He tracked shipments of things people didn't need, bought with money they didn't have. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed at a frequency that made his teeth ache. He watched his manager, a man 10 years younger with a soul the color of a spreadsheet, talk about efficiency. Mark looked at his hands, calloused, dry, and gray. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he had felt the sun on his skin without a layer of industrial smog in between. Back home, Sarah was working her third side hustle, transcribing audio files until her eyes went bloodshot. The girls, Maya and Lee, sat in front of a glowing screen, their faces pale in the dim light. They were apartment kids now. They knew not to ask for new sneakers. They knew that maybe next month meant never. The ghost in the garage. The breaking point didn't come with a bang. It came with a leak. On Tuesday, the basement storage unit, a damp, concrete cage, flooded. Mark went down with a flashlight to save what was left of their lives. He moved boxes of old tax returns and moldy winter coats. And then he saw it, tucked behind a stack of broken chairs, wrapped in a yellowed, dusty sheet, was a long, narrow shape. He pulled the fabric back. It was his '96 longboard. It was a relic from a different life, a life before the suburbs, before the debt, before the gray took over. He ran his hand over the fiberglass. It was cold, But beneath the dust, the resin was a deep, sunset orange. He saw the dings he'd repaired himself. He smelled the faint, ghostly scent of coconut wax, still clinging to the deck after 15 years of darkness. He remembered the feeling of the swell. He remembered standing at the water's edge in the pre-dawn light, the ocean breathing like a giant. He remembered the mana, that surge of electricity that travels from the wave, through the board, and into the soul. He stood there in the dark, flooded garage, holding the board like a weapon. He looked at his reflection in a dirty puddle on the concrete floor. He didn't recognize the man looking back. The great liquidation. Mark didn't go back upstairs to cry. He went back to the kitchen, sat down across from Sarah, and laid his wedding ring on the table next to a stack of bills. "We're selling it," he said. His voice was steady for the first time in a decade. "The board?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "No," Mark replied. "Everything, the car, the furniture, the TV. This life, we're leaving on Friday. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind of fire and salt." They posted everything on local marketplaces. People came and went, taking their couch, their chairs, their regrets. The apartment grew hollower, and as the rooms emptied, the air seemed to become easier to breathe. By Friday afternoon, they stood in the driveway. The gray rain was still falling, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. In front of them sat a 1998 white van, their new home. Mark strapped the orange longboard to the roof. It looked like a flame against the gray sky. He strapped the girls into the back, squeezed Sarah's hand, and turned the key. The engine roared, a beautiful mechanical defiance. They pulled out of the parking lot, past the shouting neighbors, past the logistics hub, and toward the highway. Mark looked in the rearview mirror. The suburb was shrinking. The red ink was drying up. They were heading south. They were chasing the sound of the swell.